Hello and welcome to Critical Analysis, brought to you by Student Development and the Study Skills Service. During this workshop we will look at the following: application of critical and analytical approach to information, how to adopt a critical analytical stance when writing. You should be able to do that by the end of this session. I'm deliberately going to be presenting this very quickly, and I will try to make sure my diction is clear and you understand all of the information that is presented. But it's important to remind you that we are deliberately presenting a very swift workshop based upon the deal principles of online delivery, so it's quick deliberately. So I'm aiming to record and produce this over a 15-minute session. I want you to consider the image in front of you, look at the people involved in that scenario, and I want you to consider who is the student, who is the observer, and who is the lecturer. Normally I'd let you pause and think about that for a long time. You can pause the video if you wish, but we're going to explain immediately the situation. I want you to consider that the student could easily be any number of those, or any one of those. They could all be students. Any one of those individuals could be the lecturer. They could be lecturers preparing and getting ready for a series of tutorials. They could be all observers demonstrating in some kind of breakout room scenario, even though they're not in a breakout room, they're clearly in a gymnasium. But it looks as though that student is about to do flies with dumbbells. Now, if the gentleman in the centre is doing flies, is he the lecturer? He could be the lecturer. He could be a professor of physiology, or it could be the gentleman holding his back. They could be the professor of physiology, for example. Who knows? It could be that both gentlemen in the centre of the image are students, and the lecturer could be the guy with the pen behind his ear. The point to this is that you can never be certain what is taking place, and you can only ever have an impression. Bear that in mind when you are applying critical analysis, or when you're assessing the material that's being drawn upon whenever you're writing an essay, composing a dissertation, undertaking research, and so on. What appears to be obvious upon closer inspection sometimes is not all that straightforward. The message, the underlying allegory in this photograph is that this looks like a classic scene in a gym where a coach and a student and an observer are doing an activity. But you can be quite confident about that, but what you cannot be completely confident about is who exactly is who in the situation. You need to apply this discerning caution when you are looking at the evidence that you are applying when writing essays or composing reports or writing whatever it is you happen to be writing for your academic assessments. Applying critical analysis in an academic context. Critical analysis is about taking something apart, examining the different components as just demonstrated with the photograph, and taking information and points of view and weighing up the significance, comparing and contrasting various points of view or various pieces of evidence, evaluating, making judgments about it and their value. This is crucial because it gives you a sense of difference between the descriptive student, i.e. the student who describes what they read but offers very little more than that, or if you do what is written on the screen, i.e. weighing up the significance of evidence, you compare and contrast the range and the differences between evidence, and you evaluate or you make judgments about evidence and its value, you are demonstrating to your lecturer that you are sharp. You are aware of the information, you understand what it means, and you understand how to apply it in context. This is the difference between a descriptive student and an analytical student. Also, those principles mentioned also give a clear indication that you deserve to achieve, or you are striving towards a higher performance within, as described in the mark scheme. Read your mark scheme. It will describe what I have just said, or words to that effect. Benefits of critical analysis. This enables you to view a subject from a range of perspectives. It helps you develop a more thorough understanding, and it prevents you from being too descriptive, as already discussed. What lecturers look for it is critical analysis, and that is above anything else that a student could display. Provided that critical analysis occurs appropriately, it's applied effectively, and it makes sense in situ, then students will be pleasing and demonstrating prowess and progress and development and academic development and greater understanding, and you are demonstrating the credentials for potentially further down the track awarding your degree, whether it be undergrad, MA, or for that matter even level 8 PhD. So whatever your achievements are, if you're able to critically engage and critically analyse, you are doing and demonstrating effective, appropriate academic practice. And as I mentioned earlier, it will get you more marks. You need to be analytical when thinking, reading and writing. Let's take this example. Gallotta et al. 2009 found that fundamental movement skills, FMS, coincide with the crucial first decade of a child's development. Doherty and Brennan, 08, pinpointed the years from 6 to 12 as a period of significant neurological development that allows for greater movement control. If a student wrote that, and they were, for example, a sports science student, that is acceptable. That's not an unacceptable, and that's not a shoddy piece of work by any stretch. It demonstrates that the student has read this material, and they are awkwardly, nonetheless, but they are trying to apply that to some kind of message in a paragraph. If that was a paragraph that stood on its own and it sat there and it didn't really say much or do anything else and it didn't include any other information than that, your lecturer, whoever that may be, would most definitely accuse the student of description, overly descriptive sentences, and they would probably get feedback just saying, intimating that kind of notion. So to improve that, you would do the following. Avoid too many descriptive statements, as shown here, and the following would be: focus on the bold sentence. Thus, both studies confirm that childhood is an optimum time for coordinative motor skills to be trained. That's actually very important, seemingly insignificant, but a very, very pinnacle and useful part of the critical analysis technique, because it summarizes that you understand. It begins to show a synthesis of the information. It is summarizing and it's synthesizing. Thus both studies. So the student, let's pretend it's you, the reader and the listener in this case, is drawing attention to the fact that the studies have something in common, i.e. thus both studies confirm that childhood is an optimum time for coordinative motor skills to be trained. So it's drawing upon the fact that there is a common threaded underlying theme here between both examples. But the part in green shows the real critical engagement. While research emphasises the importance of the coach in nurturing FMS at this period of a child's life, neither study gives sufficient attention to the value of variation. Gallotta et al. 09 in particular fail to acknowledge that not all children experience the same age-related developmental stages in the same way. From the perspective of the coach, then, age should serve as a guide rather than a definitive prescription. Pause, reflect, even pause the video if you have time and it's convenient and if you want to. However, presuming you have already paused the video, you would note upon reflection that the section in green is confirming real rigor. It's beginning to confirm an idea of rigor, clear understanding. This is the student's voice. The part in green highlights what the student is experiencing, what they are understanding, what they are beginning to draw upon, and it's actually showing a sense of integrity, independent thought, student scholarly reflection, scholarly analysis, scholarly engagement with the material. And that is the almost the elixir, really, for less dramatic expression. But that is almost the fundamental benefit of useful critical analysis, because the sentence in bold summarizes what the descriptive section says at the top. The descriptive section at the top, Gallotta et al., all the way down to movement control. That part, those two sentences there, 2 or 3 sentences, they describe the actual evidence. The bit in bold summarizes and synthesizes and kind of, it punctuates the importance and draws together the common threads in the topic between the evidence. But the part in green, that is arguably the most valuable. They're all together, they're all important together, the whole block is important together. But the part in green really, really shows to your tutor that you understand how to critically engage, how to critically analyse the work, and how to evaluate in quite sophisticated terms with this element of panache and grammatical fluency, that you understand the differences between Gallotta et al. And the work of Brennan and Doherty and Brennan 08, and you understand the potential issues there, because arguably this kind of sample could appear in a literature review potentially, and in that kind of area, or perhaps in the research methodology. It could occur anywhere in a lecture. Sorry, not in a lecture, in a dissertation. But let's pretend that this area has been found in a literature review. You are beginning to get to grips with the material, and you're beginning to identify where in the evidence base of the relevant material that you're discussing, where the opportunities for further study lie. That is the key point. Critical analysis will always point towards opportunities. It may feel as though it's being critical and negative, but actually it's not. It's being constructively critical, thereby being constructively analytical, and thereby constructively highlighting opportunities for study. Thinking analytically. This involves standing back from the information given, questioning to explore a subject in more detail. Look for different points of view. A perspective can contrast or oppose, it can agree and support, and either of the above are applicable, but add a new element to the discussion. This is what we did in the green section of the previous example. How would you begin to analyse this? Regular exercise has significant benefits for an individual's health. Possible questions you should apply if you read that material in a journal. What is meant by regular? What is enough? Is there such a thing as too much? What kind of exercise? Is some exercise better than none, even if it's not regular? Are we all in the position to undertake regular exercise, and so on? Physical, emotional, social, cultural, financial, geographic, what are those factors and how do they apply? What are the benefits of regular exercise upon an individual's health? Do we benefit in the same way? Are there all useful benefits? For example, an elite athlete who's spent a lifetime, a career in elite athletics, elite sport, they might not get the same, to draw upon an Americanism, the same newbie gains from early benefits of renewed exercise. Whereas somebody who's been sat on a sofa for the past 25 years and eating hamburgers, good luck to them, no offence, no one's judging, but if you've been doing that, you're on a fast track to a heart attack, but at the same time you're on a fast track to very poor muscle memory, and as a consequence we don't all benefit in the same way. The elite athlete would benefit in a very different way from exercise, because their body would respond in a very different way. Their body would respond in a more efficient way, one would expect. Somebody who's experiencing what was referred to as newbie gains, for example, they might have the immediate benefit of feeling that there's been this huge revolutionary difference to their body, because their body is suddenly doing something that they haven't done for a long time or ever before, and consequently that if it's done appropriately and effectively and to an immeasurable extent, those kinds of experiences, to somebody experiencing what is referred to as newbie gains, would benefit from clearer cardiovascular movement or clearer cardiovascular function in their body. Their upper cavity in their chest area would feel much clearer. Their nasal passages would potentially feel much more efficient, and so on. Now, I'm not saying that everybody would experience that, but focus on the fact that examples here are given just a prompt and help you begin to reflect. But not everybody has the same perspective. That is the crucial element, that the crucial undertone to this entire explanation. Not all perspectives are the same, and that is how and why debate exists in mathematics, debate exists in the science community, and debate exists in nearly every academic field. What to consider when reading. Identify the line of reasoning in the text, critically evaluate the line of reasoning, possible flaws, limitations, strengths in the reasoning, and so on. It's important that you also really consider where the writer's conclusions and decide whether the evidence given supports these conclusions. Identifying and explaining why different people arrived at different conclusions is also very important. So it could be, for example, and we've seen this during recent months, during 2020, this unprecedented period in human history, frankly, without trying to sound too superlative. It's quite possible that many people of the current day and age have never, in fact, nobody has really experienced the circumstances that the entire world is going through during a pandemic. However, identifying and explaining why different academics reach different conclusions about the evidence could be related to statistical interpretations if you are perhaps an economics student. It could be that the method of gathering information is quite general. It could be that the methodology of gathering information differs from region to region. We've seen this between countries gathering data, for example, related to public health. We've seen the way that one country gathers information, the frequency, the kinds of information they're gathering is not always comparable to their neighbour counterparts in the same geographic region, and so on. There's so many permutations of the way data can be collected that the same numerical sums and the same calculations are sometimes a bit trickier to apply, and that is a rudimentally simplistic notion, but it's still a useful notion because it's a notion that prompts a student, a scholar, to really consider what factors are in play that enable an academic or a group of academics to reach particular conclusions. Why did the lab rat behave in a particular way? Why did the rabbit used in scientific experimentation in 1920X, why did that rabbit behave? Why did their body react in a particular way to a pharmaceutical experiment? And so on. The examples are never ending. But the important thing to remember is that perspective, as mentioned a moment ago, is everything. Engage with what you're reading, seeing by asking questions. You need to ask the very common ones that everyone will be vaguely familiar with. What? How? Why? What is the significance? What are the strengths and weaknesses? How what is said? How does what is said compare to what other writers say? You should also consider, among those basic simplistic views, to what extent, how do we know this is true? How reliable is this source? What is it based upon? And what could be going on below the surface? A good example of that are some phrenology in the late 19th century, and some of that kind of some of that fed into the bizarre, frankly bizarre political ideas of the early 20th century. Not all things that came before us were necessarily bizarre, but the analogy that I'm giving is about the notion that sometimes you can link science to politics, and sometimes you can vice versa, and sometimes you can link statistics or mathematics to politics. And when that is the case, you can almost guarantee that there will be some machination of complexity. And if that is taking place, you need to be questioning why. Why is the evidence being presented in the way it is? Is there an economic driver? Is there a geographic influence? Is there an ideological concept that is having an underlying effect upon the general reception and the general conclusions of academics? What do we not know about the evidence? What is preferable? For what reasons are the factors presented? Or what do we not know about this? Which is preferable? For what reasons did the chemical reaction take place? Was the temperature different? Were the environmental factors different? And so on. Reflecting critical analysis. This is how you apply it in writing. Get the balance right. Critical analysis, for example. Globalization is the process by which businesses or other organizations develop international influence or start operating on an international scale. Oxford, 2017. Think Coca-Cola. Think Apple. Think Google. Think other multinational conglomerates, multinational economic monopolies. Think multinational brands that are identifiable from Tanzania to Turkmenistan to Tonga to Tottenham Court Road, all over the place. Anywhere in the world, certain brands are identifiable, and that is an economic characteristic attributed to globalization, arguably. However, Oxford 2017 is the example in this case. To analyse this, how does this process work? Who does it involve? Who benefits? Who loses? Can the benefits be seen to outweigh the cost? What is the significance of this information? Descriptive and analytical and critical analytical writing, the differences and the different functions. Descriptive writing states what happens, it states what something is like, it states the order in which things occur, it describes what a theory or person says, it lists details. I've touched upon this earlier. Critical and analytical writing, which is very valuable to any mark scheme on any course, frankly, in any university, and generally in higher education. This identifies the significance, it evaluates the strengths and weaknesses, it weighs one piece of information against the other, it shows why something is relevant or suitable. It weighs up the importance of component parts, it gives reasons for selecting each option, and it shows the relevance of links between pieces of information. What do you think of this? Fundamental movement skills, FMS, are key to sports development. It is important that the coach emphasises fault correct when the movement breaks down. It goes on, and it says more. It talks about Mandingo et al. 2007, breaking down skills is a better way, etc., according to Miles 04. Now, this is an option that you could choose. This is potentially better. Fundamental movement skills are key to sports development, with evidence showing a high correlation between poor mastery of FMS during childhood and later dropout rates in sports participation. Williams 05. However, equally problematic is their overdevelopment through excessive single sport training and so on. So I'm going to end the example of reading. I'm not going to read any more. That is a prime between this one. This is naive. It's not awful, but it's very naive. This is sophisticated. It's sophisticated because an engagement with the material, a confidence, this imbibes a scholarly confidence. It imbues a scholarly confidence. It demonstrates a real understanding, and it's almost like a bit of a show-off piece. It's a very sophisticated example of showing how a student can flip relevantly, by the way, not just not just serendipitously, but a student can flip between valuable and key information that helps to support a evidential discussion. Think about the way you move between sentences. That's essentially what I've just said. This example does that very, very well. Linking words. Think about the language you use. Positive, for example. Let's just look at the first one. As X 2015 highlights, emphasizes, this certainly appears to be the case. And there are others below that. There are 4 more. And then if we look at the negative, this would seem to be rather highly, somewhat debatable, rigid, questionable. So be aware of the manner in which you're expressing your ideas on each paragraph. People enjoy reading positive, constructive things. Academics, by their nature, they don't want to object to everything. They realise it might seem like that, but they don't. They want to see proof. They want evidence. Mathematics, for example, seeks mathematical truth. It seeks evidence-based truths, solutions to complex problems. And it seeks them in the most efficient and simple way. That is the goal. And so be aware of the benefit of positive and negative sentence structures. To recap, critical analysis involves digging beneath the description, looking at why and how something happens, considering the implications in the application, looking at something from different perspectives, comparing and contrasting points of view, evaluating these in terms of strengths and weaknesses. Finally, remember, when we think critically, we are being active. We are not passively accepting everything we read, see and hear, but questioning, evaluating, making judgments, finding connections and categorizing. It means being open to other points of view and not being blinded by our own biases. That's actually really, really important. And it's important that you remember that academics at the University of South Wales are here to help you. Please look at our website for further information, or contact us at studyskills.southwales.ac.uk. Thank you for listening.